Hello, humanoids. This is Ian T. Mello, and welcome to Squared Circle History, the podcast that chooses a promotion, focuses on a specific year, and gives a comprehensive and unbiased look at the best matches, moments, promos, and feuds. I encourage you to check out the actual footage of the wrestling events that are being discussed because, and I cannot stress this enough, the intent of this podcast is to make new fans of the product of the yesteryear. I'm a lifelong wrestling fan, and I love all of the history that there is of televised professional wrestling. So let's travel through wrestling history together here on Squared Circle History. Today we are going to focus on World Championship Wrestling in 1993, and what a year it was. To put you in the right time frame, let's go through what was happening in pop culture during the year of 1993. In theaters, we saw the release of such films as True Romance, Mrs. Doubtfire, The Sandlot, Jurassic Park, What's Eating Gilbert Grape, A Bronx Tale, The Nightmare Before Christmas, Rookie of the Year, Dazed and Confused, Grumpy Old Men, Son-in-Law, Benny and June, 6 Degrees of Separation, So I Married an Axe Murderer, Sleepless in Seattle, Wayne's World, Coneheads, Cool Runnings, Groundhog Day, Robin Hood Men in Tights, Addams Family Values, Dennis the Menace, Falling Down, Searching for Bobby Fischer, Philadelphia, Tombstone, Schindler's List, Italian Movie, In the Line of Fire, Carlito's Way, The Firm, Indecent Proposal, Menace to Society, Free Willy, Rudy, The Fugitive, Fire in the Sky, Hocus Pocus, Leprechaun, Demolition Man, Last Action Hero, Homeward Bound, Judgment Night, Cliffhanger, and Mr. Nanny, which starred Hulk Hogan. In record stores, we saw the release of such albums as In Utero by Nirvana, Verses by Pearl Jam, Enter the Wu-Tang 36 Chambers by the Wu-Tang Clan, Transnational Speedway League, Anthems, Anecdotes, and Undeniable Truths by Clutch, Songs of Faith and Devotion by Depeche Mode, Midnight Marauders by A Tribe Called Quest, Modern Life Rubbish by Blur, A Storm in Heaven by The Verve, Undertow by Tool, Bloody Kisses by Typo Negative, Chaos AD by Sepultura, Music Box by Mariah Carey, Pork Soda by Primus, Pablo Honey by Radiohead, Everybody Else Is Doing It So Why Can't We by the Cranberries, Doggy Style by Snoop Dogg, Siamese Dream by the Smashing Pumpkins, Rid of Me by PJ Harvey, Black Sunday by Cypress Hill, August and Everything After by Counting Crows, Are You Gonna Go My Way by Lenny Kravitz, In on the Kill Taker by Fugazi, Janet by Janet Jackson, Bat Out of Hell 2, Back into Hell by Meatloaf, and Lethal Injection by Ice Cube. On television, we saw the debuts of such as Beavis and Butthead, The X-Files, Frasier, Star Trek Deep Space Nine, Animaniacs, Boy Meets World, Living Single, Martha Stewart Living, Walker Texas Ranger, Homicide: Life on the Streets, Legends of the Hidden Temple, NYPD Blue, Bill Nye the Science Guy, Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, The Nanny, Lois and Clark, Diagnosis Murder, Iron Chef, Rocco's Modern Life, Grace Under Fire. In the news, a violent 51-day standoff between federal agents and a religious sect known as Branch Davidians occurred in Waco, Texas, resulting in multiple casualties. The siege aired on live television, ending when members within the compound set their buildings ablaze in a horrific scene, resulting in 76 deaths, including cult leader David Koresh. In other news, Prince changed his name to a symbol. Actor Brandon Lee, son of martial arts icon Bruce Lee, was tragically killed on the set of the film The Crow. Lee was shot with a prop gun that had a real bullet lodged into the chamber. Actor River Phoenix tragically died of a drug overdose in West Hollywood outside of the popular nightclub The Viper. 3 young boys in West Memphis, Arkansas were kidnapped and slain, with the suspects becoming known as the West Memphis Three. The legendary first-person shooter Doom was released on PC. Notorious drug lord Pablo Escobar was gunned down by police in Colombia. In the World Wrestling Federation, Hulk Hogan made his triumphant return, but an even more notable occurrence was the birth of Monday Night Raw on the USA Network. Elsewhere in the wrestling world, ECW debuted their weekly syndicated television show. But all this paled in comparison to what was happening in World Championship Wrestling. In front of the camera, the promotion featured another year of great in-ring action, including the return of an icon. Behind the scenes, an unlikely candidate was promoted to president and would take the company to incredible heights. That unlikely president was none other than Eric Bischoff. Join us on this trip as we journey back to WCW in 1993. The January 2nd episode of Worldwide Wrestling saw the Unified World Tag Team Champions Ricky the Dragon Steamboat and Shane Douglas battle Flying Brian Pillman and Barry Windham. Douglas took a beating most of the match and was the victim of a DDT to the concrete floor, courtesy of Windham. Back in the ring, Windham launched Pillman off the top rope and crashing down onto Steamboat with a big splash. Somehow, Steamboat kicked out. Dustin Rhodes raced to ringside to check on Douglas, who was still out on the floor. Steamboat made the tag to Rhodes, who began brawling with Windham. On commentary, Jesse the Body Ventura became irate because the referee allowed Rhodes to substitute for the injured Douglas. Rhodes used the cast on his arm to bash Windham across the face and score the pinfall victory. Steamboat and Rhodes didn't celebrate, instead attending to the injured Douglas. The January 2nd edition of Saturday Night began with a special report, with Eric Bischoff announcing that Big Van Vader had defeated Ron Simmons on December 30th in Baltimore, Maryland, to regain the WCW World Heavyweight Championship. Jesse the Body Ventura hosted an edition of Up Close, joined by his guest, Arn Anderson. Discussing his history in the NWA and WCW, Anderson said, "I learned that you either learn to persevere or you get out." Anderson discussed his previous injuries, as well as his current knee injury. Because of this, Cowboy Bill Watts hasn't renewed Anderson's contract for 1993. Anderson cut a promo on the man that injured him in the first place, Eric Watts. He said, "I was here first. I earned my way, and I'm not gonna be shoved aside and take it lightly. You can rest assured of that. I'm Arn Anderson. I've earned that right." The January 9th episode of Saturday Night saw Tony Schiavone host Up Close, joined by his guest, the WCW World Heavyweight Champion, Big Van Vader. Schiavone talked about Vader's accomplishments in football, with the champion saying, "I've been an All-American since I was a baby boy." Vader said that none of his football accomplishments can compare to the WCW World Heavyweight Championship. He talked about his contenders, bragging that the run of Sting is over. Vader said that with Harley Race by his side, he's going to be the champion for a long time. In the main event, Ricky the Dragon Steamboat battled Barry Windham in a hard-hitting, competitive bout. Windham focused on the left knee of Steamboat, weakening it every chance he could. Still, Steamboat battled back and took the fight to Windham. Referee Nick Patrick was knocked out of the ring, unable to count when Steamboat leaped off the top rope to take down Windham with a high cross body. Windham retaliated, tossing Steamboat over the top rope and crashing onto the concrete floor. The referee saw it, with Steamboat winning by disqualification. Windham body slammed Steamboat onto the concrete floor, with Shane Douglas racing to his partner's aid. Flying Brian Pillman and Stunning Steve Austin ambushed Douglas, while Dustin Rhodes raced to the scene to trade punches with Windham. Steamboat joined Douglas in battling Pillman and Austin, with officials racing to... The January 10th episode of the main event saw Cactus Jack battle Mr. Wonderful Paul Orndorff in a street fight to determine who would replace the injured Ravishing Rick Rude in the Thunder Cage. With Harley Race looking on, Orndorff and Cactus pummeled one another around ringside. Back in the ring, Cactus ripped Orndorff's shirt off of him and choked him with it. They brawled in the aisle, with Race shouting at both of them to keep fighting. Cactus had enough of Race's verbal abuse, leaping off the apron with a flying clothesline to take down Race. Big Van Vader ambushed Cactus in the ring, with Race and Orndorff joining in on the beatdown. Orndorff spiked Cactus with a pile driver, while Race hit a knee drop to the head. Both Orndorff and Race held down Cactus, allowing Vader to crush him with a big splash. Vader leaped off the second rope, bouncing off of Cactus with another big splash. Michael Hayes interviewed the trio of Race, Orndorff, and the World Heavyweight Champion, Big Van Vader. As Race hyped the Thunder Cage at the Clash of the Champions, Cactus Jack snuck in, wielding a giant steel shovel. Cactus waffled Vader across the back, battering both Orndorff and Race right after. Wrestlers attempted to restrain Cactus, who failed to cooperate, instead bashing them with the shovel. Hayes attempted to interview Cactus, who lurked around ringside. Cactus said, "Vader, Mr. Wonderful, Harley Race, you made one big mistake. You let Cactus Jack live." He said, "There's one thing that you don't have that you're going to need desperately, and that's eyes in the back of your head." The Clash of the Champions 22 took place on January 13th from the Mecca in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. A vignette aired, showing a group of kids skipping school to play basketball on the courts. One kid threw the ball over the hoop and bouncing into a limo. Out came Too Cold Scorpio, who slam dunked the basketball in front of the kids. Scorpio told the kids to stay in school and then danced with them all the way to their school. Backstage, Larry Zbyszko interviewed the team of Flying Brian Pillman and Stunning Steve Austin. Pillman said, "Tonight, live and in Technicolor, millions will watch the birth of two new legends, Stunning Steve and Flying Brian, the next great dynasty in professional sports." He continued, saying that he and Steve will do whatever it takes to win the World Tag Team Championships. Backstage, Larry Zbyszko interviewed Harley Race, who was surrounded by his team that would be competing in the Thunder Cage. The WCW World Heavyweight Champion Big Van Vader, The Barbarian, Barry Windham, and Mr. Wonderful Paul Orndorff. Race said that they were no longer associating with anyone that does business with Cactus Jack. He proceeded to fire the Barbarian from their team. Irate, the Barbarian grabbed Race by the throat with both hands, lifting him high up in the air. Vader ambushed Barbarian, with Orndorff and Windham joining in on the beatdown. Ricky the Dragon Steamboat and Shane Douglas defended the Unified World Tag Team Championships against Flying Brian Pillman and Stunning Steve Austin. The match began at a breakneck pace, with all four brawling until Austin and Pillman retreated to the floor to regroup. After taking a beating, Pillman and Austin resorted to illegal tactics to gain the advantage. Pillman tossed Steamboat over the top rope and crashing onto the concrete floor. Austin followed it up by body slamming Steamboat on the floor, with Douglas rushing to his partner's side. The assault on the Dragon continued in the ring, with Steamboat getting battered. Austin held Steamboat in place, with Pillman springing off the top rope with Air Pillman. Steamboat moved, with Pillman taking out his own partner. The Dragon took down Pillman with a back suplex and finally made the tag to Douglas, who cleaned house. All four brawled, with the referee attending to an exhausted Steamboat. Douglas planted Pillman with a belly-to-belly suplex and made the cover, but there was no referee to make the count. Austin leaped off the top rope with a double axe handle, smashing the back of Douglas. After Austin dragged a wary Pillman on top of Douglas, the referee made the count. Douglas kicked out. Austin and Steamboat brawled on the floor, with the referee getting between them. While the referee scolded Steamboat, Austin used a tag team title to smash Douglas upside the head. The referee saw it and called for a disqualification. Austin held up a bloody Douglas, with Pillman jumping off the second rope to bash him with the belt. Steamboat shielded his partner, taking lashings from the belt swung wildly by Pillman. Wrestlers and officials raced in to break things up, with Austin and Pillman marching around the ring with the tag team gold. Footage aired from December 30th in Baltimore, Maryland, where Big Van Vader annihilated Ron Simmons, who went into the match with an injured shoulder. Vader capitalized on the injury, hitting Simmons with a shoulder breaker. This was enough to put away Simmons, with Vader scoring the pinfall victory to become the WCW World Heavyweight Champion. Jesse the Body Ventura interviewed the new World Heavyweight Champion Big Van Vader and Harley Race. Ron Simmons interrupted, battering Vader and taking him down with a spinebuster. Simmons pummeled Race in the aisle until Vader made the save, hitting Simmons with a big splash. Vader hoisted Simmons up and hit multiple shoulder breakers on the already injured shoulder. In the main event, Sting and Dustin Rhodes battled Barry Windham, Mr. Wonderful Paul Orndorff, and the WCW World Heavyweight Champion Big Van Vader in a Thunderdome cage match. It was chaotic, with the numbers becoming a factor. Cactus Jack used bolt cutters to break into the cage and fight beside Sting and Rhodes. Jack took off his boot, using it to bash Vader, Orndorff, and Wyndham over the head. In the end, Cactus jumped off the top rope, bashing Orndorff over the back with a boot to score the pinfall victory. The January 16th episode of Saturday Night began with Cowboy Bill Watts announcing that he's stripping the injured Ravishing Rick Rude of the United States Championship. A vignette aired with the WCW World Heavyweight Champion Big Van Vader issuing a challenge in front of a snow machine. Vader challenged Sting to face him at the White Castle of Fear and play his game. Handheld footage aired of Eric Watts signing an autograph and taking a photo for a young fan at a gas station. Arn Anderson pulled out, attacking Watts and ramming his head off the hood of his own car. Watts fought back, locking Anderson in a STF. The police showed up, arresting Watts, while Anderson writhed in pain on the pavement. Hailing from the state of Euphoria, the giant rocker known as Max Payne had a successful debut, making quick work of his opponent. From the locker room, Tony Schiavone hosted Up Close, joined by his guests, Flying Brian Pillman and Stunning Steve Austin. Pillman said that they were focused and had all the makings of a dynasty. Austin repeated those sentiments and said that nobody could stand in their way. Pillman said, "The fourth quarter belongs to us." Austin said that if they were to face Ricky the Dragon Steamboat and Shane Douglas in a 2 out of 3 falls match, they'd be crowned the new Unified World Tag Team Champions. In the main event, Ricky the Dragon Steamboat faced the natural Dustin Rhodes to determine the new WCW United States Champion. Both men gave it their all in a scientific, back-and-forth contest between two great competitors. The competition was fierce, with the referee getting knocked out in the crossfire. Moments later, Steamboat hit Rhodes with a crossbody that sent them both tumbling over the top rope. Barry Windham raced to the ring, DDTing Steamboat onto the concrete floor. The referee woke up and counted out Steamboat, with Dustin Rhodes crowned the new United States Champion. Jim Ross and Larry Zbyszko interviewed Rhodes, who was mortified at the sight of the replay. Rhodes stormed off, saying he needed to talk to Steamboat. The January 23rd edition of Saturday Night saw the debut of the high-flying Robbie V, the future Rob Van Dam. Robbie was successful in his enhancement match, winning with a split-legged moonsault. Tony Schiavone hosted Up Close, joined by his special guest, Sting, who discussed his history with the World Heavyweight Champion, Big Van Vader. Sting talked about his invitation to the White Castle of Fear, saying he wasn't afraid. He said he's grateful for the opportunity to get his hands on Vader one more time. Barry Windham battled Too Cold Scorpio in an exciting back-and-forth match. In the end, Windham used an implant DDT to defeat Scorpio. In the main event, Dustin Rhodes defended the United States Championship against Ricky the Dragon Steamboat. Tensions were high and tempers reached their boiling point, with both men fighting a more physical bout than the week prior. The two scurried for a pinfall to no avail, with the television time expiring and the match declared a draw. Steamboat and Rhodes continued brawling as the show went off the air. The January 30th edition of Worldwide Wrestling saw the Unified World Tag Team Champions Ricky the Dragon Steamboat and Shane Douglas battle Flying Brian Pillman and Stunning Steve Austin in a non-title match. Pillman and Austin gained an early advantage by using illegal double-team maneuvers behind the referee's back to pummel Steamboat. Douglas tagged in, cleaning house, until Pillman and Austin again resorted to cheating. While the referee held back a frustrated Steamboat, Douglas rolled up Austin, with nobody to make the count. Pillman sprung off the top rope, connecting with Air Pillman to the back of the neck of Douglas. The referee turned around to see Pillman covering Douglas, promptly making the 3 count. Pillman and Austin were victorious. The January 30th episode of Saturday Night featured a much-talked-about cinematic vignette. Sting took a helicopter to the White Castle of Fear, which was located deep in the Rocky Mountains. He stepped into a room, which was occupied by multiple women, a smorgasbord of food upon a long table with a giant mastodon helmet in the middle, and a little person wearing an eye patch. They marveled over Sting, who found the place to be eerily familiar. From another part of the castle, Harley Race informed the World Heavyweight Champion Big Van Vader of Sting's arrival. Wearing a white fur cape, Vader confronted Sting, but not before asking his people, "Who's the man?" Sting said, "Nice place you have here. Reminds me of your personality. Cold." Vader cleared the table of all the food with one swipe, and asked Sting if he was familiar with a strap match. The table ignited, and Vader tossed Sting a leather strap. They played tug-of-war with the strap, with Vader pulling Sting closer towards the flames. As the strap snapped in the fire, and Sting flew backwards, the vignette ended, hyping the strap match at SuperBrawl 3. Jim Ross interviewed the debuting Steve Regal, a well-traveled wrestler from Blackpool, England. Ross hyped Regal's debut match, which would take place the following week. In the main event, Sting and the United States Champion Dustin Rhodes battled Barry Windham and the World Heavyweight Champion Big Van Vader. Rhodes took a beating from both Vader and Windham, but eventually tagged into Sting, who cleaned house. While Sting connected with a Stinger Splash on Windham, Harley Race attacked Rhodes on the floor. Rhodes fought back, striking Race multiple times, while Sting put Windham in the Scorpion Deathlock in the ring. Vader tackled Sting to break the hold, and then dove off the apron, tackling Rhodes below. Windham drilled Sting with an implant DDT, and then draped him over the top rope. Race joined in, pulling on Sting's arms to leave his back stretched. Vader began to whip Sting repeatedly across the back with a leather strap. Wrestlers and officials raced to the ring to save Sting and attempt to stop Vader's reign of terror. The February 6th edition of Saturday Night saw Jim Cornette, Beautiful Bobby Eaton, and the Smoky Mountain Wrestling Tag Team Champions, the Heavenly Bodies, Sweet Stan Lane, and Dr. Tom Pritchard march through the crowd and storm the broadcast desk. Cornette demanded to speak to Cowboy Bill Watts, who made his way to the scene. Speaking with passion, Cornette said, "I walked out of here, and so did Stan Lane. 2 years ago because the people that run this crummy, stinking company tried to make the Midnight Express look like a bunch of idiots. Cornette talked about the formation of a new team and a new company, Smoky Mountain Wrestling, with Cornette saying it's where they actually appreciate wrestling. He was irate that the Rock and Roll Express were back and didn't like footage of them airing. Cornette said that he brought Eaton back into the fold, saying he's been misused and abused for years. He demanded a public apology for footage airing of the Heavenly Bodies getting defeated. Watts called Cornette a sissy and said he wasn't going to get an apology. He said that the next time Cornette and his men interrupt the show, he's having them arrested. The Rock and Roll Express came out with tensions high. Watts pointed to the ring, saying it was neutral ground and encouraged both teams to settle their differences. Both teams battled in the ring with their regular clothes on in an exciting bout that saw the Rock and Roll Express shine. On the floor, Ricky Morton smashed the heads together of Cornette and Eaton. Moments later, Cornette struck Morton in the throat with a tennis racket behind the referee's back. Things further broke down, and Eaton ran into the ring to attack Morton, causing a disqualification. Eaton and Lane hit Morton with the Veg-O-Matic, while Pritchard tossed Robert Gibson to the floor. Wrestlers raced to the ring to break things up, with Cornette swinging the tennis racket to fend them off. In the main event, Sting was in action against Barry Windham. It was a highly competitive bout, with tensions high and the referee getting knocked out. Harley Race handed Windham a leather strap, which Sting got a hold of to clothesline Windham. The referee awoke to make the 3 count to give Sting a pinfall victory. Sting used the strap to hang Windham over the top rope, with the World Heavyweight Champion Big Van Vader making the save. The referee reversed the decision due to Sting's actions, with Windham winning by disqualification. The February 13th episode of Saturday Night saw the World Heavyweight Champion Big Van Vader compete in an enhancement match. After making quick work of his opponent, Vader was victorious by pinfall. Harley Race smeared face paint on the victim's face, reminiscent of Sting. Vader continued his assault, whipping his humiliated opponent. The February 20th edition of Saturday Night saw Gordon Solie host Up Close, on location from the street. His guest was Barry Windham, who arrived on his motorcycle for the interview. Solie asked Windham about the rumor that the Nature Boy Ric Flair would make his return at SuperBrawl. Windham wasn't interested in talking about Flair, and instead demanded to talk about his match against the NWA World Heavyweight Champion, the Great Muta. Solie did as told, with Windham saying that he was destined to win the NWA World Championship. He said, "It's one that I want, and it's one that I'm going to have." In the main event, Ricky the Dragon Steamboat battled Flyin' Brian Pillman in a lumberjack match. Both Pillman and Steamboat purposely threw one another to the floor, with the lumberjacks getting their shots in before throwing each man back into the ring. Stunning Steve Austin served as one of the lumberjacks, getting his shots in on Steamboat whenever possible. Steamboat leaped off the top rope, with Pillman catching him with a dropkick to the face. Pillman locked Steamboat in a Boston Crab, with Austin adding extra leverage by pushing against the forehead of his partner. The lumberjacks were divided, nearly coming to blows as Austin backed off. Pillman locked in an abdominal stretch, with Austin pulling on his partner's arm to add an illegal advantage, which again riled up the Lumberjacks. Steamboat lunged through the ropes at Austin, with the Lumberjacks pulling them apart. The Lumberjacks began brawling with each other on the floor. While the match continued, the show went to a commercial. By the time the show came back, the match had ended, with the footage airing. While the Lumberjacks brawled on the floor, Steamboat locked Pillman in a figure 4 in the ring. Austin snuck in, dropping a forearm onto the face of Steamboat. Shane Douglas argued with the referee while shenanigans took place behind him. Austin held up Steamboat, with Pillman charging. Steamboat moved, and Pillman collided with his own partner. The Dragon rolled up Pillman and picked up a pinfall victory. SuperBrawl 3 took place on February 21st, beginning with Max Payne playing the national anthem on his electric guitar. Backstage, a limo arrived, with Missy Hyatt attempting to get an interview. Security pushed her out of the way as more guards ushered the passenger out of the limo. It was Nature Boy Ric Flair. Too Cold Scorpio battled Chris Benoit in an exciting bout that began at a rapid pace. It was an excellent athletic display, showcasing the tremendous skills of both wrestlers in a great back-and-forth match. In a death-defying moment, Benoit hit Scorpio with a belly-to-belly suplex off the top rope. Benoit powerbombed Scorpio, stacking him up for a pin attempt, but only getting a 2 count. Scorpio battled back, twirling in the air 360 degrees and connecting with a splash on Benoit in the corner. Cartwheeling in midair off the top rope, Scorpio landed on Benoit with a splash, but only got a 2 count. Benoit shifted the momentum and connected with a leg drop off the second rope. Scorpio kicked out at 2. The clock counted down, with the time limit nearly expiring. Scorpio rolled up Benoit with 1 second remaining and scored the pinfall victory. The British Bulldog Davey Boy Smith made his debut, defeating Wild Bill Irwin with a running power slam. Following the match, Tony Schiavone interviewed the Bulldog, who said that he had his sights set on Vader's World Heavyweight Championship. Jim Cornette and Beautiful Bobby Eaton led the Smoky Mountain Wrestling Tag Team Champions, the Heavenly Bodies, to the ring for their match against the Rock and Roll Express. Prior to the start, multiple officials forced Eaton to the dressing room, much to the chagrin of Cornette. The Rock and Roll dominated the early minutes, riling up the fans to kick off an action-packed bout. Cornette tripped up Ricky Morton to turn the tides, even using the tennis racket to strike Morton in the throat behind the referee's back. Both Sweet Stan Lane and Dr. Tom Pritchard took turns wearing down Morton. Robert Gibson got the tag, joining Morton in hitting Pritchard with a double dropkick. Cornette distracted Gibson, allowing Pritchard to successfully ambush his opponent. Pritchard made the cover, with Gibson barely kicking out. Cornette distracted the referee, while Pritchard backdropped Gibson over the top rope. Morton covered Pritchard, with the referee still held up. Eaton returned to the ring, leaping off the top rope with a flying forearm smash. Morton dodged it, with Eaton landing on Pritchard. The referee turned around to make the count as Gibson covered Pritchard and scored the pinfall victory. New Smoky Mountain Tag Team Champions were crowned, with the Rock and Roll Express celebrating their victory. The Nature Boy Ric Flair received a huge ovation as he made his way to the ring for an interview with Tony Schiavone. Flair said, "WCW, the Nature Boy is back to rock and roll." He joined Schiavone and Jesse the Body Ventura on commentary. The Great Muta defended the NWA World Heavyweight Championship against Barry Windham. They wrestled at a slow pace, wearing one another down in a largely mat-based bout. Muta gained the upper hand and soared off the top rope with a moonsault. Windham rolled out of the way, with Muta crashing onto the canvas. Muta attempted another moonsault, with Windham getting his knees up. Windham spiked Muta with a DDT and scored the pinfall victory to become the new NWA World Heavyweight Champion. Ric Flair strapped the belt around the waist of Windham, with the new champion leery of the Nature Boy. In the main event, Big Van Vader defended the WCW World Heavyweight Championship against Sting in a White Castle of Fear strap match. Sting took the champion down in the early minutes and connected with two big splashes off the top rope. With Vader knocked out, Sting began whipping him repeatedly with the leather strap. Harley Race hopped onto the apron, with Sting taking a swipe at him with the strap. On the floor, Sting tugged on the strap, with Vader bouncing face first off a steel ring post repeatedly. Sting body slammed Vader on the floor and dragged him around the ring, touching two ring posts. Vader sent Sting crashing face first against a steel guardrail to break the count. Back in the ring, Sting missed a big splash off the top rope. With blood streaming down his back, an angry Vader began punching Sting repeatedly upside the head. Vader connected with a Vader bomb, with Harley Race at ringside saying, "How do you like it, Sting?" With strap in hand, Vader began whipping Sting repeatedly. Vader climbed to the second rope with Sting on his back, falling backwards with a Samoan drop to the canvas to crush the Stinger. The champion attempted another Vader bomb, with Sting rolling out of the way. Vader climbed to the top rope, with Sting tugging on the strap to send Vader crashing to the canvas. The champion didn't stay down long, superplexing Sting off the top rope. Vader dragged Sting behind him, touching three corners. Sting wrapped his legs around the bottom rope and struck Vader to break the count. The Stinger hoisted Vader up onto his shoulders with the champion's legs swinging and knocking out the referee. Sting marched around the ring, touching three corners but tripping over the referee to break the count. Blood poured from the left ear of Vader as he tied the strap around Sting's leg and dragged him around the ring. Vader easily touched three corners, with Sting then hanging onto the bottom rope. Sting kicked Vader in the face, causing him to fall backwards and slap the fourth corner to win the match. Vader retained the World Heavyweight Championship. Sting began whipping a bloody Vader with the leather strap, with the champion releasing himself from the strap and rolling away to safety. The February 27th edition of Saturday Night saw Tony Schiavone interview the Nature Boy Ric Flair. Surrounded by an entourage of security and women, Flair said that he was the most dominant wrestler of the past decade. Flair said that he was back to stay, calling WCW the premier wrestling promotion in the world today. He talked about all of the champions, putting them all on notice. Flair said that his latest run was going to be called a Flair for the Gold. The March 6th episode of Saturday Night saw Tony Schiavone interview the United States champion, the Natural, Dustin Rhodes. They were interrupted by Mr. Wonderful Paul Orndorff, who demanded a title shot. Rhodes was passive, but called Orndorff Paula before his exit. Orndorff became irate, saying, "My name's not Paula." Tony Schiavone interviewed the Nature Boy Ric Flair, only to be interrupted by Arn Anderson. Holding up 4 fingers, Anderson asked if it meant anything to Flair. Excited, Flair said, "What's causing all this?" The main event saw Sting in action against enhancement talent Bruiser Mastino, who would go on to become Kane in the WWF. In the end, Sting was victorious, making Mastino submit in the Scorpion Deathlock. The March 13th edition of Saturday Night saw Tony Schiavone interview the returning, ravishing Rick Rude. He addressed the new United States champion Dustin Rhodes, with Rude calling him his whipping boy. Rude said, "I want to work to regain what is rightfully mine, and I want to pay with my blood, my sweat, and my tears to once again become the United States champion." He said, "I want to make Dustin Rhodes suffer." In the main event, Dustin Rhodes defended the United States Championship against Mr. Wonderful Paul Orndorff. The fans chanted Paula, with Orndorff becoming irate. Ravishing Rick Rude joined Tony Schiavone and Jesse the Body Ventura on commentary, while a competitive bout ensued. The action got intense, with Rhodes and Orndorff brawling on the floor. Referee Nick Patrick got too close to the action, getting tossed aside. Rhodes rammed Orndorff's head against a steel ring post, causing an immediate disqualification. Rude was irate, slamming down his headset, marching to the ring, and challenging Rhodes. Officials held Rhodes back, with a confident Rude begging for a fight. On March 11th, Sting defeated Big Van Vader in London, England, to become the new World Heavyweight Champion. 6 days later in Dublin, Ireland, Big Van Vader regained the world title, defeating Sting with a powerbomb. The March 27th episode of Saturday Night featured Max Payne's new music video, Norma Jean's Blues. Payne strummed his guitar, with the haunting melody blasting while smoke and strobe lights filled the dark room. Footage aired from Manchester, England, with the hometown hero, the British Bulldog Davey Boy Smith, in action against Vinny Vegas. The Bulldog was victorious, defeating Vegas with a running power slam. Mr. Wonderful Paul Orndorff dealt with the chance of Paula during his match against Robbie V. Orndorff was successful, defeating Robbie with a pile driver. The March 27th episode of Worldwide Wrestling saw Ricky the Dragon Steamboat and Shane Douglas defend the Unified World Tag Team Championships against Flyin' Brian Pillman and Stunning Steve Austin. With the referee distracted, Pillman wrapped a towel around the neck of Douglas and slammed him to the mat. On the floor, Pillman continued to choke Douglas with the towel. Pillman launched off the apron, missing the intended target of Steamboat and smashing against a steel guardrail. The referee once again became distracted, with Austin using the towel to choke Douglas. After taking a pummeling, Douglas managed to tag Steamboat, who took down Pillman and Austin with ease. With the referee distracted, Steamboat tossed Austin over the top rope, which should have been a disqualification. Steamboat hit Pillman with a superplex off the top rope, and then connected with a high cross body. Austin attempted to break a pin attempt, by hitting a forearm smash. Steamboat moved, and Austin landed on his own partner. Douglas and Austin brawled up the aisle, with the referee breaking things up. While the referee restrained Douglas, Austin used a tag team championship to smash Steamboat over the back of the head. Austin dragged Pillman on top of Steamboat, with the referee making the 3 count. Pillman and Austin were crowned the new, unified World Tag Team Champions. The April 17th edition of Saturday Night featured the debut of the powerful Scott Flash Norton. He had an impressive enhancement match, making quick work of his opponent and picking up a pinfall victory by putting his hand over his opponent's face. In the main event, we saw a hard-hitting bout between the WCW World Heavyweight Champion Big Van Vader and Cactus Jack. Vader was vicious, bashing Cactus repeatedly in the face with stiff punches and forearms. Cactus fought back, diving off the top rope to take down Vader with a flying clothesline. On the floor, Cactus charged with a clothesline, with Vader falling backwards onto a row of steel guardrails. Cactus plowed down Harley Race with a clothesline for good measure. Back in the ring, Cactus hung over the back of Vader with a sleeper hold locked in. Vader heaved his body backwards, crushing Cactus on the mat. Back on their feet, Vader continued punching Cactus with brutal shots to the face. With blood dripping from an obviously broken nose, Cactus crumbled to the mat. Vader hoisted Cactus over his shoulders, falling backwards with a Samoan drop. The champion hit the Vader bomb, crushing Cactus and then tossing him to the floor, where Race got a few cheap shots in. Race held up Cactus, with Vader charging. Cactus moved, with Vader knocking Race over with a clothesline. Vader lunged at Cactus, who moved, with the champion smashing against a steel guardrail. Cactus dove off the apron, somersaulting onto Vader and knocking him to the floor. As Vader screamed in pain, Cactus rolled into the ring, gaining a count-out victory. Vader became furious, tossing steel guardrails around, while Race tried to calm him down. Tony Schiavone attempted to interview Vader, who snatched the microphone. Irate, Vader said he'd fight Cactus anytime, anywhere. Race warned Cactus, saying, "You started a war that you're not going to survive." The April 18th episode of Worldwide Wrestling saw Barry Windham defend the NWA World Heavyweight Championship against Steven Regal. A great back-and-forth scientific wrestling match ensued, leading to Regal hitting a crossbody that sent Windham tumbling over the top rope. Regal got his ankle caught up in between the ropes, with the referee freeing him. Back in the ring, Windham drilled Regal with a leaping DDT and scored the pinfall victory to retain his title. Following the match, Tony Schiavone interviewed Windham, asking him his opinion on the return of the Nature Boy Ric Flair. Windham stormed off the set, visibly angry. The April 24th episode of Saturday Night saw Tony Schiavone and Jesse the Body Ventura interview Cactus Jack at ringside. With his face bandaged, Cactus talked about his family greeting him as he left the hospital. Cactus said that he saw fear in the eyes of his wife and young son, who urged him not to get back in the ring with Vader. Regardless, he dared Vader to put him down, saying that nothing will keep him down. In the main event, the WCW World Heavyweight Champion Big Van Vader battled Cactus Jack in what was dubbed as a Super Grudge match. While Vader posed for the cameras, Cactus Jack body-slammed Harley Race in the middle of the ring. Cactus took the fight to Vader on the floor, with both slugging it out up the aisle. As Vader went through the entrance curtain, Cactus bashed him over the head with a chair out of view of the referee. Cactus ripped the mask off of Vader, biting him on the forehead and then suplexing him stomach first onto a steel guardrail. Race tried to get involved, with Cactus body slamming him onto the floor. Cactus ran off the apron, hitting an elbow drop onto Race below. Back in the ring, Vader caught Cactus in midair, slamming him down hard onto the canvas. Vader began throwing fists, with Cactus punching back, with both men left staggering. The champion leaped off the top rope, hitting Cactus with a flying body tackle. Vader slammed Cactus with a Samoan drop, and then connected with a Vader bomb. Another Vader bomb followed, with Race ordering more punishment. Vader dove off the top rope with a seated senton, with Cactus rolling out of the way. Cactus ran at Vader with a clothesline that sent them both tumbling over the top rope. With the battle raging on, Cactus somersaulted off the apron. Vader rolled out of the way, with Cactus hitting the ground with a thud. Race pulled up the protective padding, exposing the concrete floor. Vader hoisted Cactus high up, powerbombing him onto the exposed concrete. With Cactus unconscious, Vader scored a victory by countout. Paramedics attended to Cactus, stretchering him out of the arena in a scary scene. Wrestlers gathered backstage as Cactus was taken away from the arena in an ambulance. The May 1st edition of Saturday Night saw Jesse the Body Ventura at ringside interviewing Scott Flash Norton. They were interrupted by the debuting Colonel Robert Parker. He wore a white suit with matching cowboy hat and puffed on a cigar. After a commercial break, Tony Schiavone interviewed Parker, who said, "Everything I touch turns to gold." Parker said that he was in WCW to promote the greatest star of all time. He said, "Invest in Robert Parker because it's just like putting your money in the bank, if you know what I mean." Parker said he'd be back next week with a contract that would make somebody the greatest of all time. Ric Flair's new interview segment, Flair for the Gold, made its debut, hosted by the Nature Boy himself. The segment was held on a stage built to look like a cabana, complete with Fifi the French maid behind the bar. Hyping his show, Flair said, "Bigger than Arsenio, bigger than Jay Leno, we are a Flair for the Gold." Promising a big-time sports celebrity, Flair brought out the World Heavyweight Champion, Big Van Vader, who had Harley Race by his side. They sat on a couch for the interview, with Vader stealing a tray of food out of the hands of Fifi. Flair asked the champion about his challengers, with Vader saying, "Vader is the hunter, he's not the hunted." Vader hyped his upcoming title match against Davey Boy Smith, referring to him as the British Chihuahua. The champion asked Flair, "Who's the man?" Flair refused to respond, so Flair asked Fifi the same question. Fifi said, "But of course, Mr. Ric Flair." Vader became irate, telling Flair to put on a pair of tights and enter the School of Pain. Race ended the interview with he and Vader storming off the set. The music played for the United States champion Dustin Rhodes, but he was nowhere to be found. Instead, ravishing Rick Rude made his way through the curtain, telling Tony Schiavone that Rhodes had suffered a mishap in the training room. Rhodes pushed through a wall of wrestlers who failed to hold him back. Dusty tried to hold back Dustin, with Rude provoking both men. Dustin dove over the top rope and onto Rude to kick off a wild brawl between the two. Wrestlers and officials tried to pry the two apart as the show faded to black. The May 8th edition of Saturday Night featured a promo from Ole Anderson, who hyped Slamboree as the biggest event in wrestling history. He ran down the names of some of the legends that would be in attendance. Ole held up 4 fingers, saying you'd have to tune into the pay-per-view to see what that means. Tony Schiavone interviewed the team of Los Dos Hombres, who were joined by an interpreter. The interpreter said that the team had come from Mexico with $19 in their pocket. They were looking to face the World Tag Team Champions so they can bring a tape back to their home country. Ricky the Dragon Steamboat interrupted, warning Los Dos Hombres that the champions, the Hollywood Blondes, can't be trusted. Steamboat shook hands with the team to end the segment. The Nature Boy Ric Flair hosted a Flair for the Gold with a handful of girls on the set. While Flair hyped Slamboree, Arn Anderson sat at the bar, with Fifi serving drinks. Anderson hyped his upcoming title shot against the NWA World Heavyweight Champion Barry Windham, who was scheduled to be Flair's guest. A telephone rang, with Fifi handing it over to Flair. It was Barry Windham, who informed Flair that he wouldn't be there. Momentarily upset, Flair's smile returned once he started partying with the women. Flying Brian Pillman and Stunning Steve Austin were now known as the Hollywood Blondes. They wore matching gear with their respective names on the back of each of their silver vests, and their boots lit up when they walked. The World Tag Team Champions said they'd give Los Dos Hombres a title shot, and even said they'd pitch in for the tape. The May 9th edition of the main event saw the WCW Tag Team Champions, the Hollywood Blondes, confront Los Dos Hombres. Both Flying Brian Pillman and Stunning Steve Austin became frustrated, claiming that the Hombres were actually Ricky the Dragon Steamboat and Shane Douglas. Out came Douglas, who taunted the Blondes in the aisle. Television time expired, with the bout declared a no contest. The May 15th episode of Worldwide Wrestling saw Dustin Rhodes defend the United States Championship against Ravishing Rick Rude. Rhodes planted Rude with a back suplex and bridged for a pin. Both men's shoulders were on the mat, with 2 referees making the count. One referee saw Rude get his shoulder up, while the other saw Rhodes get his shoulder up. Controversy was in the air, with the issue left unresolved. The March 15th episode of Saturday Night saw Nature Boy Ric Flair host a Flair for the Gold. Fifi sat behind the bar, with Arn Anderson sitting on a stool on the other side. Missy Hyatt barged in, screaming in the face of Flair for supposedly leaving her on the side of the road. Hyatt insulted Anderson, saying he could never be a 60-minute man. She insulted Fifi, saying, "If she wants to look good in that outfit, I think she needs to see a doctor." Missy threw her heels at Flair, and then barged off the set. This week's guests were the WCW World Tag Team Champions, the Hollywood Blondes. Stunning Steve Austin called Flair an old man, and Anderson an antique. Flying Brian Pillman further insulted Flair, asking for an autograph for his great-grandmother. The Blondes asked Flair to tell them old horseman stories, even claiming they forgot the name of the group. Pillman mocked the weight of Anderson, with Double A lunging out of his chair. Flair tried to defuse the situation, calling the Blondes his guests, while they claimed that they were the stars. As the Blondes continued to talk trash, Flair removed his jacket and finally snapped. Flair started screaming, with the Blondes scurrying off the set. The May 16th episode of the main event saw the WCW World Tag Team Champions, the Hollywood Blondes, battle Los Dos Hombres. One of the Hombres dove off the top rope, taking down Pillman with a high cross body and scoring the pinfall victory. At ringside, Tony Schiavone attempted to interview the Hombres, with one taking off his mask. It was Ricky the Dragon Steamboat, who said that he and Shane Douglas were going to defeat the Blondes inside of a steel cage at Slamboree. The May 22nd edition of Saturday Night saw Nature Boy Ric Flair host a Flair for the Gold. Both Flair and Anderson wore kimonos, while Fifi stood behind the bar. This week's guest was Ravishing Rick Rude, who was mad that he didn't know about the theme. Fifi led Rude to a changing room, returning soon after in a kimono to sit on the couch next to two geisha girls. Rude asked what the future held for the Nature Boy, with an excited Flair choosing not to answer. Returning the favor, Rude brought out a female to introduce to Flair and Anderson. Her name? Fufu. Rude made his exit, while Flair and Anderson were mesmerized by Fufu, who stripped to her lingerie. The WCW World Heavyweight Champion Big Van Vader came to the ring with Harley Race for a public workout. Vader mauled 5 competitors with ease until the British Bulldog Davey Boy Smith put an end to things. The Bulldog suplexed Race, with Vader making the save. In mere seconds, the Bulldog lifted Vader over his shoulder and power slammed him to the mat. The Bulldog connected with a dropkick that sent Vader tumbling over the top rope and crashing to the floor. As the show was going off the air, the brawl between Vader and the Bulldog continued backstage. Slamboree took place on May 23rd from the Omni in Atlanta, Georgia. Over 40 legends stood in the ring to open the show, with fireworks bursting above the squared circle. Nearly a dozen men carried a shrouded chariot to the ring, while Max Payne played Norma Jean in the background. Out from the chariot came the Fabulous Moolah. In the opening match, Beautiful Bobby Eaton and Chris Benoit battled Too Cold Scorpio and Marcus Alexander Bagwell. Eaton and Benoit pummeled the lesser experienced Bagwell until Scorpio got the tag. Scorpio soared off the top rope with a corkscrew leg drop, landing right on the head of Benoit and picking up the pinfall victory. Van Hammer was in action against Colonel Robert Parker's Mystery Man, the returning Sid Vicious. In short order, Sid powerbombed Hammer and picked up a pinfall victory. In a Legends match, Superfly Jimmy Snuka, Magnificent Don Morocco, and Dick Murdoch battled Chief Wahoo McDaniel, Blackjack Mulligan, and Jumping Jim Brunzell. Old wounds were opened, with Snuka and Morocco getting heated with one another. Things broke down, with all 6 brawling, and the referee calling for the bell, ruling the match a double disqualification. Nature Boy Ric Flair hosted a Flair for the Gold, promising that he was going to reform the 4 Horsemen. Out came Arn Anderson, with Flair saying that Tully Blanchard stood them up. Ole Anderson came out next, with Flair then introducing the newest member of the Horsemen, the debuting Pretty Paul Roma. The fans booed as Roma made his way to the set, raising his 4 fingers as the newest member of the Horsemen. Flair made one more announcement, saying that he was returning to the ring to battle the Hollywood Blondes. In a Legends match, Dory Funk Jr. battled Nick Bockwinkel, with Johnny Valentine joining Tony Schiavone and Larry Zbyszko on commentary. Funk and Bockwinkel fought to a 20-minute time limit draw, receiving a standing ovation from the fans. The first class was inducted into the WCW Hall of Fame, with Gordon Soley reading off the names that couldn't be there. Buddy Rogers, Andre the Giant, Pat O'Connor, Wilbur Snyder, Gene Anderson, Dick the Bruiser, and Eddie Graham. 3 legends were in attendance for their inductions: Lou Thez, Vern Gagne, and Mr. Wrestling No. 2. Sting was in action against The Prisoner, the man who formerly competed as Nails in the WWF. It wasn't pretty, with Sting picking up a pinfall victory after hitting a flying clothesline off the top rope. Ricky the Dragon Steamboat and Shane Douglas, dressed as Los Dos Hombres, to face the WCW World Tag Team Champions, the Hollywood Blondes, inside of a steel cage. During the bout, Steamboat removed his mask and perched himself on top of the cage. Steamboat dove off the top with a high cross body, taking down both of the tag team champions. Both Steamboat and Douglas hit a pair of drop kicks to take down Pillman and Austin for a 2 count. Austin caught Douglas with a stun gun and managed to pick up a pinfall victory. Barry Windham defended the NWA World Heavyweight Championship against Arn Anderson. A cut opened above the eye of Windham, with Anderson honing in on the wound. With his face covered in blood, Windham grabbed his championship and began to walk up the ramp. Anderson dragged him back down the aisle and tossed him back into the ring. Blinded by passion, Anderson accidentally shoved the referee. This allowed Windham to grab his belt, bashing Anderson across the face with it and picking up the pinfall victory. In the main event, Big Van Vader defended the WCW World Heavyweight Championship against the British Bulldog Davey Boy Smith. It was hard-hitting, with the 2 powerhouses bruising one another with thunderous strikes. In an impressive feat of strength, the Bulldog hoisted Vader up for a stalling suplex, slamming him to the mat with ease. Vader recovered and jumped off the second rope, with the Bulldog catching and power slamming the champion to the mat. The Bulldog raced at Vader, clotheslining him over the top rope and tumbling to the floor. Back in the ring, the Bulldog went for a crucifix, with Vader falling backwards, squashing his challenger. Vader jumped off the second rope, colliding against the Bulldog with a flying body tackle. They battled to the top rope, where the Bulldog sent Vader crashing to the mat with a front suplex. Bleeding from the nose, the Bulldog dove off the top rope, hitting Vader with a diving headbutt. Vader battled back, hitting a big splash off the second rope to crush the Bulldog. A wounded Vader threw the Bulldog to the floor, where Harley Race got in a few cheap shots. Vader continued his dominance in the ring, and locked the Bulldog in a camel clutch. The Bulldog powered up to his feet, with Vader on his shoulders, falling backwards. Soon after, Vader charged, with the Bulldog catching the champion and nailing him with a big power slam. The Bulldog made the cover, but Harley Race dragged him out of the ring by the braids. On the floor, the Bulldog got his hands on Race, only to be ambushed by Vader, who wielded a chair. The referee called for the bell, with wrestlers running to the aid of the Bulldog. Vader took out everyone and continued his assault on the Bulldog. Sting raced to the ring and launched off the top rope, taking down Vader with a flying clothesline. The May 29th episode of Saturday Night featured an announcement from WCW board member Greg Gagne. He announced that the United States Championship was being vacated, with an announcement coming in the near future to determine a bout between Ravishing Rick Rude and Dustin Rhodes to determine a new champion. Nature Boy Ric Flair hosted a Flair for the Gold, joined by his guest, Sting. Understandably hesitant, Sting kept his distance from Flair due to their checkered past. Flair asked Sting why he wears the face paint, with the Stinger saying that he paints his face so he can stick up for other people that might feel different. Fifi brought out a group of children, with Sting agreeing to sign autographs. Sting proceeded to lead everyone in an aerobics class, with Flair, Anderson, Fifi, and the children getting in on the exercising. The June 5th edition of Saturday Night saw Tony Schiavone interview the Nature Boy Ric Flair and Arn Anderson. They discussed their upcoming match against the WCW World Tag Team Champions, the Hollywood Blondes, at the Clash of the Champions. Flair said, "The ironic thing about all this is I was willing to sit back and take a new role." He called the Hollywood Blondes punk kids, and said, "We all get older, but very few of us get greater." Flair said, "Pillman, Austin, the 17th, we will walk that long immortal aisle one more time. Woo!" Ric Flair's music played, with Stunning Steve Austin taking over the microphone. Austin said, "Ladies and gentlemen, it's the world-renowned celebration of nostalgia, a Flair for the old." A woman larger than Fifi carried out a sign, dusting it off. Flying Brian Pillman came out wearing a gray wig, a red robe, and walked with a cane. Pillman spoke as if he didn't have teeth, pretending he was Flair. The fans chanted, "We want Flair." Pillman brought out his guest, Austin. As Austin talked about the success of the Hollywood Blondes, Pillman pretended to fall asleep, with Austin slapping him awake. Arn Anderson approached the Blondes, with Austin saying, "The last time I saw a body like that, it had an apple stuffed in its mouth, and it was roasting over an open flame." Anderson punched Austin in the face, dragging him to the ring for a brawl. Pillman smashed his cane over the back of Anderson, with Ric Flair racing in to make the save. The June 12th episode of Saturday Night saw Tony Schiavone interview the newly named Sir Steven Regal, who wore a suit and tilted his nose high in the air. By Regal's side was Sir William, who was better known to wrestling fans as Bill Dundee. Regal said that the Queen asked him personally to show the world that the British are still the greatest people in the world. A vignette aired, with fans rallied outside a warehouse at night. The World Heavyweight Champion Big Van Vader greeted his fans, who chanted his name in unison. Vader entered the building, joined by Harley Race, Colonel Robert Parker, and Sid Vicious, who received chants of his own. Colonel Parker and Harley Race approached a podium, announcing that their clients have formed an alliance. They were named the Masters of the Powerbomb, with a jazz band playing for the monumental announcement. Parker said that they had a list of people who they intended to eliminate from professional wrestling. The first two names on the list were Sting and the British Bulldog Davey Boy Smith, with a match signed for Beach Blast. Parker said that he was offering Sting and the Bulldog a chance to retire and plane tickets to anywhere they'd like. Vader and Sid joined hands and raised their arms, with the crowd chanting "Powerbomb" in unison. Reporter Catherine White arrived at the home of Cactus Jack, where his wife answered the door. The wife of Cactus cried, saying that she hasn't seen her husband since he left the hospital. Through the tears, she said that Cactus had snapped in and out of his identity while he was in the hospital. Yelling back, Cactus's wife told her son, Dewey Cleveland, not to suplex the cat. Headlocks only. From the locker room, Tony Schiavone interviewed the Nature Boy Ric Flair and Arn Anderson. The WCW World Tag Team Champions, the Hollywood Blondes, raced in, brawling with Flair and Anderson in a wild scene. The Clash of the Champions took place on June 16th from the Norfolk Scope. World-renowned ring announcer Michael Buffer made his debut, introducing both world title matches for the evening. Barry Windham defended the NWA World Heavyweight Championship against Too Cold Scorpio. The champion showed dominance early on, taking down Scorpio with a flying clothesline. Windham suplexed Scorpio, floating over for a pin attempt, with Scorpio kicking out with authority after 2. A DDT followed, with Scorpio barely kicking out. Scorpio rolled up Windham with an inside cradle, with the champion barely kicking out. Windham continued his assault, with a resilient Scorpio refusing to quit. The champion set Scorpio onto the top rope, with the challenger knocking Windham crashing back to the mat. Scorpio soared through the air, landing on Windham with a big splash, nearly picking up a victory. The challenger continued to catch Windham off guard, leading to multiple split-second near falls. Scorpio leaped off the top rope, connecting with a missile dropkick. Windham barely kicked out. Scorpio sprung off the ropes, with Windham catching him with a punch to the face. Windham drilled Scorpio with a leaping DDT and scored the pinfall victory. In the main event, the Hollywood Blondes defended the WCW World Tag Team Championships against the Nature Boy Ric Flair and Arn Anderson in a 2 out of 3 falls match. This was Flair's first match back, with the crowd erupting as he got his hands on Pillman and Austin in the early minutes. With the referee distracted, Pillman used a towel to choke Anderson and shift the momentum. Anderson fought back, spiking Austin with a DDT and tagging in the Nature Boy. Flair cleaned house and caught Pillman with a flying forearm to score a pinfall and win the first fall. The second fall began with Flair and Pillman trading chops. Austin distracted Flair, allowing Pillman to knock the Nature Boy off the apron. Outside the ring, Austin got a hold of Flair and suplexed him on the concrete floor. Pillman chopped at the chest of Flair and bashed his head against a steel guardrail. Austin followed it up by dropping Flair throat first onto the guardrail. Back in the ring, Flair stumbled into a tag with Anderson cleaning house. Anderson planted Austin with a spinebuster, with Pillman barely breaking up a pin attempt. With the referee distracted, Pillman clipped the knee of Anderson and Austin made the cover. Miraculously, Anderson kicked out. Pillman tagged in and honed in on the injured knee of Anderson. One mistake by Pillman allowed Anderson to make the tag to Flair. The Nature Boy proceeded to lock Austin in a figure 4 leg lock. Barry Windham raced to the ring, leaping off the top rope and landing on Flair with a knee drop. The referee called for a disqualification as a 3-on-1 beatdown ensued. Paul Roma raced into the ring to even the odds, fighting off Windham and the Blondes. At ringside, Tony Schiavone interviewed Barry Windham, who said that he became the champion in Flair's absence. Windham called Flair gutless, with the Nature Boy ambushing him and a brawl ensuing to end the broadcast. The June 19th episode of Saturday Night featured a vignette with the World Heavyweight Champion Big Van Vader, Sid Vicious, Harley Race, and Colonel Robert Parker on a speedboat. They talked trash about Sting and the British Bulldog Davey Boy Smith. Meanwhile, Sting and the Bulldog were on the beach, playing volleyball with a group of kids. Back in the speedboat, Colonel Parker vouched for Cheatham, a little person with an eye patch. With a shark fin strapped to his back, Cheatham swam around in the waters on the beach and planted a bomb on Sting's boat. The volleyball game was interrupted by Vader, Sid, Race, and Parker, who marched out of their boat and onto the beach. Sting and the Bulldog marched up to their foes, with Colonel Parker offering them plane tickets to anywhere in the world. Humoring their foes, Sting attempted to convince the Bulldog that it might be better to just take the tickets and retire. In unison, Sting and the Bulldog said, "Nah, I don't think so. We'll see you at Beach Blast." As the children cheered, Ray said, "You just signed your death warrant." Two girls informed Sting that there was a funny man that was hanging around his boat. As Sting checked things out, the Bulldog realized what was happening. The Bulldog raced to the boat, tackling Sting into the water, with the boat exploding moments later. As smoke rose from the wreckage, beachgoers looked on in fear. Miraculously, Sting and the Bulldog emerged from the water, unscathed. Reporter Catherine White was in Cleveland, following a lead in search of Cactus Jack. White walked down a dark alley, asking several homeless people if they knew Cactus Jack. Just when all hope was lost, a man named Swampy said that he had seen Cactus. White gave Swampy $50 to take her to Cactus. Instead, Swampy asked for a business card, saying he'd call White if he heard anything. A burglar tried to steal White's purse, but clumsily tripped and fell to the ground. White grabbed her purse and walked away, disappointed. At ringside, Tony Schiavone interviewed the Nature Boy Ric Flair, Arn Anderson, and Paul Roma. Flair begged Barry Windham for a shot at the NWA World Heavyweight Championship, suggesting that they face off at Beach Blast. The June 26th episode of Worldwide Wrestling saw Tony Schiavone reporting outside of the dressing room of Nature Boy Ric Flair. NWA World Heavyweight Champion Barry Windham showed up, claiming that Flair was using his dressing room. Pandemonium ensued, leading to Flair marching to the ring, demanding a fight. Flair and Windham brawled in the ring, with security and officials forced to pull them apart. Later, the fight continued in the parking lot, with Flair and Windham again getting pulled apart. The June 26th episode of Saturday Night saw the Nature Boy Ric Flair host a Flair for the Gold. Flair wore a cowboy hat, introducing his guest, the American Dream, Dusty Rhodes. As Rhodes hyped the upcoming matches at Beach Blast, he was interrupted by the Assassin. For weeks, the Assassin had been calling out Rhodes, saying that they had unfinished business. He said that Rhodes has forgotten where he's come from, saying that money has changed him. This struck a nerve with Rhodes, who shot up to his feet. The Assassin called Rhodes a jelly bean and told him to have a conversation with his mother. He said he was going to bring the competitive spirit out of Rhodes, with the American Dream screaming back in his face. Security got between the two as the show cut to a commercial. Catherine White's lead came through, with Swampy leading her down the same alley she'd been to a week prior. Swampy said that Cactus Jack had helped her with her purse the week prior, but White didn't notice him. They walked deep beyond the trees, where a beardless cactus preached his theories about life to a crowd of listening ears. White interrupted, with the preacher claiming that he wasn't Cactus Jack. This doppelganger claimed to be a sailor who merely told tales of his days on sea. A woman warned White to stay away, saying it was dangerous for her to be there. Cactus called the woman Bang Bang, telling her to settle down. White said, "We have found Cactus Jack, but he seems more lost than ever." The July 3rd edition of Saturday Night saw Catherine White return to the dark alleys of Cleveland. Dustin Rhodes tagged along, hoping that a familiar face would help Cactus Jack remember his identity. White and Rhodes found Cactus again preaching of his days out at sea. Cactus thought that Rhodes was a country singer, claiming he remembers his face from an old album cover. The woman, Bang Bang, was irate, with White asking her why she was so upset. Just when Rhodes reminded Cactus of his catchphrase, the woman abruptly ended the interview. With a group of homeless people shuffling around, Cactus and the woman disappeared while someone stole Rhodes' cowboy hat. In the main event, the WCW Tag Team Champions, the Hollywood Blondes, and the NWA World Heavyweight Champion Barry Windham faced the Horsemen, Nature Boy Ric Flair, Arn Anderson, and Paul Roma. It was competitive, with the Blondes and Windham ganging up to Triple Team Anderson. Fighting through it, Anderson made the tag to Flair, who unleashed his anger on Windham and the Blondes. Flair locked Windham in a figure 4 leg lock, with Anderson and Roma fighting off the Blondes. Windham got hold of the referee, tossing him out of the ring in an act of desperation. Initially, it seemed like the television time limit had expired. Ultimately, the referee declared the Horsemen the winners by disqualification. The July 10th episode of Saturday Night saw Catherine White return to Cleveland to confront Cactus Jack. White brought along Cactus's wife Colette and son Dewey. Unfortunately, Cactus and Bang Bang were gone, with Swampy saying that Bang Bang was afraid Cactus was going to get his memory back. Swampy had cleaned up his act, taking Cactus up on an offer to get his life together. In return, Wendell, formerly known as Swampy, wants to help Cactus. Wendell led Catherine, Colette, and Dewey to Cactus's new camp. Cactus didn't recognize his pregnant wife or son, with Colette bursting into tears. Beach Blast took place on July 18th, complete with a beach entrance stage and a cabana, where Jesse the Body Ventura hung out at the start of the show with the female lifeguards. The Hollywood Blondes defended the WCW World Tag Team Championships against Arn Anderson and Paul Roma. Pillman and Austin strategically double-teamed Anderson, with a frustrated Roma seething in the corner. Fighting back, Anderson suplexed Austin over the top rope and crashing onto the concrete floor. Anderson crawled his way to the corner, tagging in Roma, who got his shots in on the Blondes. Anderson got his hands on Austin, slamming him hard onto the mat with a spinebuster. Roma made the cover, with Pillman barely breaking the count. Pillman clotheslined Roma, allowing Austin to reverse a roll-up, hook the tights, and score the pinfall victory. Ravishing Rick Rude battled the Natural Dustin Rhodes in a 30-minute Iron Man match to determine the new United States champion. Rude scored the first fall, planting Rhodes with a rude awakening for a pinfall. The majority of the bout saw Rhodes fighting back from underneath. With 3 minutes remaining, Rhodes hit Rude with a bulldog to score a pinfall and tie things up. Rhodes kicked it into high gear, desperate for a pinfall, with multiple unsuccessful attempts. Despite spiking Rude with a DDT, Rhodes didn't make the bell, and the time limit expired. The referee declared the bout a draw, with the United States Championship still left vacant. Barry Windham defended the NWA World Heavyweight Championship against the Nature Boy Ric Flair. In a finish that came out of nowhere, Flair had Windham in the figure 4. Windham's shoulders were on the mat, with the referee making the 3 count. Ric Flair was declared a 10-time World Heavyweight Champion. Jesse the Body Ventura interviewed Flair at ringside, with the new champion saying, "It's time once again to look at every wrestler in the world today and say, guess what? I'm back." In the main event, Sting and the British Bulldog Davey Boy Smith battled the Masters of the Powerbomb, the World Heavyweight Champion Big Van Vader, and Sid Vicious. The Bulldog hoisted Vader up in the air with an impressive vertical suplex. Vader responded by knocking the Bulldog down with a stiff flying body tackle. Sid and Vader took turns wearing down the Bulldog until a distraction from Harley Race threw things off. Vader lunged at the Bulldog, who moved, with the champion knocking Race off the ring apron. Sting tagged in, taking the fight to both Sid and Vader, but soon falling to the sheer power of the Masters of the Powerbomb. All 4 went at it, with Sting and Sid brawling up the aisle, while Vader pummeled the Bulldog in the ring. Vader moonsaulted off the top rope, crushing the Bulldog, with Sting leaping over the ropes to break up a pinfall attempt. The Bulldog took down Vader with a crucifix pin, scoring the pinfall victory out of nowhere. The July 26th edition of Saturday Night featured the debut of Harley Race's new tag team, the Masked Behemoths, known as the Awesome Kongs. They made quick work of their opponents, crushing them with ease before ever taking off their entrance gear. Following the match, Tony Schiavone presented Race with a package that was sent in for him. Race opened the box and revealed its contents: a cactus. From Hong Kong, the mysterious martial artist known as Yoshi Kwan made his debut. Kwan was victorious by submission, using a nerve hold to press above the ear and on the side of the jaw at the same time to render his opponent unconscious. The July 31st episode of Saturday Night saw the Nature Boy Ric Flair cut a promo from the set of A Flair for the Gold. Fifi held up the NWA World Heavyweight Championship with Flair giving his victory speech. Flair said he was willing to face anybody that was willing to be the man. A vignette aired with Thunderbolt Patterson approaching a young athlete backstage. Patterson introduced us to Ice Train, saying he was about to receive his big opportunity in WCW. Ice Train hyped himself up, repeating to himself, "Choo choo choo, choo choo choo." After Patterson praised the skills of his new client, Ice Train yelled, "Toot toot." Footage aired of Ice Train winning a match in a gymnasium, which was announced as his final bout before heading to WCW. The August 1st episode of the main event saw Ricky the Dragon Steamboat in action against Lord Steven Regal, who had Sir William in his corner. An impressive technical wrestling match ensued, with Regal irritated that Steamboat could keep up with him. The action intensified, with both men giving it their all until the time limit ran out. The August 8th edition of the main event featured the rematch between Ricky the Dragon Steamboat and Lord Steven Regal. This time, it was a no disqualification match, with a more intense bout ensuing than the week before. Steamboat flew off the ropes with a high cross body to take down Regal. Sir William hopped onto the apron to distract Steamboat. As Steamboat put his hands on Regal, Mr. Wonderful Paul Orndorff ambushed the Dragon. Orndorff continued his beatdown, with the referee calling off the match. The August 14th edition of Saturday Night saw Tony Schiavone conduct a ringside interview with Harley Race, who was backed by the Awesome Kongs. Race was angry that the Nature Boy Ric Flair broke his record for World Championship wins. He called Flair a coward, with the Nature Boy making his way to ringside to confront Race. Things got heated, with Race pushing Flair twice. Flair punched Race in the face, with the Kongs catching their manager. Tony Schiavone interviewed the NWA World Heavyweight Champion, the Nature Boy Ric Flair, who had a message for Sting. The screen split to show Sting in the locker room, with Flair asking the Stinger to be his partner to face the Awesome Kongs at the upcoming Clash of the Champions. Harley Race and the Kongs made their way to the ring, with Flair ready to fight. Sting raced to the ring to stand by the side of Flair, with Race and the Kongs retreating. At the end of the broadcast, Tony Schiavone interviewed the NWA World Heavyweight Champion, Ric Flair, and Sting, who agreed to be partners at the Clash. Since Sting agreed to team, Flair would grant him a shot at the title next week. The Clash of the Champions took place on August 18th and began with the news that Flying Brian Pillman was unable to compete. Stunning Steve Austin addressed their scheduled opponents, Arn Anderson and Paul Roma. Austin said that maybe they could fit them in at some point. The WCW Championship Committee had other plans, saying that the World Tag Team Championship must be defended. Steven Regal teamed with Austin to defend the titles against Anderson and Roma. Pillman joined his team to the ring on crutches, with Sir William close behind. Both Pillman and William got involved, battering Roma and allowing Austin and Regal to gain an unfair advantage. With the referee distracted, William stood on the apron, holding Pillman's crutch. Anderson reversed an Irish whip, sending Austin into the crutch, face first. The referee turned around, with Anderson rolling up Austin and scoring the pinfall victory. Anderson and Roma were crowned the new WCW World Tag Team Champions. The NWA World Heavyweight Champion, the Nature Boy Ric Flair, hosted a Flair for the Gold. His guests were the British Bulldog Davey Boy Smith and Sting, who discussed the upcoming War Games match at Fall Brawl. They were interrupted by Sid, Colonel Robert Parker, and the new team known as Harlem Heat. Sid was irate, demanding to know who Sting and the Bulldog's mystery partner would be at Fall Brawl. Sting said, "Our partner is going to shock the world because he is none other than the Shockmaster." An explosion went off, with the Shockmaster, a giant barrel-chested Fred Ottman, wearing a glittery stormtrooper helmet, tumbling through a wall. He fell flat on his face, with his mask tumbling off his head. The Shockmaster quickly put his helmet back on, standing tall in an attempt to recover one of the funniest botches in wrestling history. Sid could be heard in the background saying, "I told ya, oh god." The Bulldog was heard laughing and saying, "He fell right on his fucking ass." Sid became enraged, saying, "I don't care who you are." The Shockmaster spoke, sounding eerily similar to the Black Scorpion years prior. He wasn't intimidated by Sid, saying he'd see him and his team at War Games. The Shockmaster laughed maniacally, ending the hilariously awful segment. Mr. Wonderful Paul Orndorff defended the WCW World Television Championship against Ricky the Dragon Steamboat. After battling back and forth with multiple near falls, Steamboat rolled up Orndorff with an inside cradle and scored the pinfall victory. Despite winning the World Television Championship, Steamboat was ambushed by the former champion, who took the fight to the ramp. Orndorff hit Steamboat with a pile driver directly onto the championship belt. Sting and the NWA World Heavyweight Champion, the Nature Boy Ric Flair, were successful in defeating Harley Race's team of the Colossal Kongs. Tony Schiavone interviewed Flair and Sting at ringside, who agreed that they made a good team. Still, they hyped their upcoming championship match in 3 days on WCW Saturday night. Ravishing Rick Rude and the Equalizer faced the Natural Dustin Rhodes and his mystery partner, Road Warrior Animal, who arrived in a Z28 Camaro. Rude wasn't intimidated, saying that he knew that Animal was going to be Rhodes' partner. He was wrong. Sneaking into the ring was Rhodes' actual partner, Road Warrior Hawk. In the end, Rhodes scored the pinfall victory over the Equalizer. In the main event, Big Van Vader defended the WCW World Heavyweight Championship against the British Bulldog, Davey Boy Smith. Per the stipulation, if Vader got disqualified, he'd lose the title. The match began with the two brawling on the ramp, with the Bulldog suplexing Vader onto the runway with a thud. Back in the ring, the Bulldog planted Vader with a Samoan drop for a 2 count. Vader shifted the momentum and nailed a big splash off the top rope, with the Bulldog kicking out at 1. The Bulldog rolled Vader up with a crucifix, with the champion barely kicking out. Vader climbed to the top rope, with the Bulldog nailing an impressive standing dropkick to crotch the champion on the top rope. Shortly after, Vader hit the Bulldog with a Vader Bomb. The Bulldog kicked out. Vader leaped off the second rope, with the Bulldog catching him with a power slam that also took out the referee. The Bulldog lifted Vader up for a suplex, with Harley Race clipping the challenger's knee. Vader landed on top of the Bulldog, with the referee waking up and making the 3 count. Big Van Vader retained the WCW World Heavyweight Championship. Cactus Jack made his return, racing down the ramp to attack Vader and end the broadcast. The August 21st episode of Saturday Night saw Tony Schiavone interview Cactus Jack at ringside. Cactus gave the WCW World Heavyweight Champion Big Van Vader credit for putting him out of wrestling, but now he's back. He promised a harsh fate for the champion, closing with his signature phrase, "Bang Bang." In the main event, the Nature Boy Ric Flair defended the NWA World Heavyweight Championship against Sting. They battled back and forth in a competitive bout, with the action spilling to the floor. Flair attempted a pile driver, with Sting reversing it, backdropping the champion on the floor. Back in the ring, Flair dodged a crossbody, with Sting hitting the ropes. They continued battling back and forth, each scrambling for a pinfall. Flair locked Sting in a figure 4, with the Stinger reversing it, and the champion breaking the hold. Sid Vicious sat in on commentary, complaining that he should have gotten the world title shot. Sting got his second wind, and locked in a figure 4 of his own, with Flair making it to the ropes. The Stinger superplexed Flair off the top rope, smacking his own head on the canvas upon impact. Sting made the cover, with Flair getting his foot on the bottom rope to break the count. The action again spilled to the floor, with Flair the first to beat the referee's count. With the referee's back turned, Sid yanked Sting off the ring apron and shoved him against a steel guardrail. Flair was declared the winner by countout, but refused a tainted victory. Harlem Heat raced in, with Flair fighting them off. Sid ambushed Flair, with Sting making the save. The August 28th edition of Saturday Night featured footage from a Flair for the Gold, with the NWA World Heavyweight Champion welcoming Ravishing Rick Rude. Flair was upset that Rude was paying more attention to Fifi, who looked terrified. Rude was upset that he gave Fifi his number and she never called him back. Overstepping his bounds, Rude planted a big kiss on Fifi. She didn't like it, slapping Rude across the face. Rude grabbed the NWA Championship, using it to waffle Flair across the back of the head. He then hit Flair with a rude awakening on the tile floor. Rude got in the face of Fifi, calling her a gold digger and demanding that she tell Flair that he's coming for the world title. Ravishing Rick Rude battled the Natural Dustin Rhodes in the first match of a best-of-3 series to determine a United States champion. In the end, Rude kicked off the ropes, landing on Rhodes to break a sleeper hold and score the pinfall victory. The September 4th episode of Saturday Night began with the natural Dustin Rhodes battling Ravishing Rick Rude in the second match of a best-of-3 series to determine the United States champion. Rhodes was successful, using a backslide to pin Rude out of nowhere and tie the series. The September 11th edition of Saturday Night featured the return of the Nasty Boys, Brian Knobbs and Jerry Sags. From a restaurant, Tony Schiavone conducted an interview with the Shockmaster. Instead of wearing a stormtrooper helmet, the Shockmaster instead wore a hard hat. They discussed the Shockmaster's epic debut, with the man himself admitting that he wasn't the most graceful person in the world. Schiavone mentioned that he sees a lot of children asking the Shockmaster for his autograph. The Shockmaster said that he loves kids, and talked about his love for comic books and cartoons. As the interview came to a close, the Shockmaster tried to shake Schiavone's hand, instead knocking over a glass of water all over the table. In the main event, the natural Dustin Rhodes battled Ravishing Rick Rude to determine a new United States champion. With the referee knocked out, Rude hoisted a steel chair over his head with a wary Rhodes on the mat. Nature Boy Ric Flair raced to the ring, snatching the chair away from Rude. This allowed Rhodes to roll up Rude and score the pinfall victory to become the new United States champion. Fall Brawl took place on September 19th from Houston, Texas, and began with Ricky the Dragon Steamboat defending the World Television Championship against Lord Steven Regal. Sir William interfered, using his umbrella to attack Steamboat and allow Regal to gain an advantage. Steamboat competed with injured ribs, which Regal honed in on. Fighting through the pain, Steamboat battled back valiantly. Regal tossed Steamboat over the top rope, with the champion holding on and skimming the cat. With the referee's back turned, Sir William waffled Steamboat across the back of the head with an umbrella. Regal hit Steamboat with a German suplex and scored the pinfall victory to become the new World Television Champion. Arn Anderson and Paul Roma defended the Unified World Tag Team Championships against the Nasty Boys, who were accompanied by their new manager, Missy Hyatt. With the referee distracted, Jerry Sags waffled Anderson across the back with a steel chair. Back in the ring, the Nasty Boys wore down Anderson, attacking his now injured back. One miscue allowed Anderson to tag in Roma, who took down the Nasties with ease. Roma dove off the top rope, taking down Brian Knobbs with a missile dropkick. Soon after, Knobbs hoisted Roma onto his shoulders, with Sags climbing to the top rope. Anderson shoved Sags, who crashed onto Knobbs, with Roma falling to safety. Roma made the cover, with Knobbs barely kicking out. With the referee losing order, Anderson hit Knobbs with a big spine buster. Roma followed it up by connecting with a swan dive headbutt. Sags dove off the top rope, hitting Roma with a flying elbow. Knobbs covered Roma, scoring the pinfall victory, with the Nasty Boys crowned the new Tag Team Champions. Missy Hyatt gloated, saying that she got one over on the Four Horsemen and Nature Boy Ric Flair. A vignette aired, with Cactus Jack walking down the road, with Smashing Pumpkins posters lining the buildings. Cactus admitted that nobody really believed that those were his wife or child, nor did anybody believe that he'd really lost his mind. He said that Big Van Vader was after his head, but he can't have it. Cactus said, "Yes, you put me on the shelf for a while, but all that did was earn me valuable time. time for thoughts of you to brew like a bag of tea in a sea of hatred. And this is no sipping tea, Van Vader, it's brutality. And for you, it's a heavy dose of reality. Because when Cactus Jack comes back, keep this in mind, he's coming with bad intentions. He said, "You tried to change my world, and now we reverse the roles." In a bounty match, Harley Race led Yoshi Kwan to the ring to face Cactus Jack. It was an all-out brawl, with Race attempting to interfere. He was unsuccessful, with Cactus planting Kwan with a double-arm DDT and picking up the pinfall victory. Cactus suplexed Race into the ring and reclaimed the brown bag that was previously stolen from him. With Fifi in his corner, the Nature Boy Ric Flair defended the NWA World Heavyweight Championship against Ravishing Rick Rude. Prior to the start, Rude revealed his new tights, which had Fifi's face airbrushed across the front. The match ensued, with both men battering one another back and forth, struggling for a pinfall. Rude attempted a rude awakening, with Flair biting his opponent's fingers to break the hold. Flair connected with a rude awakening of his own, with Rude getting his foot on the bottom rope at the last moment to break the pin. They battled to the floor, where Flair chopped at the chest of Rude. Flair leaped off the top rope, connecting with a double axe handle onto Rude on the floor. Back in the ring, Rude jumped off the top rope, connecting with a flying fist drop onto Flair below. The Nature Boy barely kicked out of a pinfall attempt. Rude began gyrating for Fifi and blew her a kiss. She slapped Rude across the face. Rude pulled her in for a forceful kiss, with Fifi trying to slap him. Angry, Rude carried her into the ring and screamed in her face. Flair attacked Rude and locked in the figure 4. The referee was distracted by Fifi, which allowed Rude to pull out a pair of brass knuckles from his tights and bash Flair in the face. Rude made the cover, scoring the pinfall victory to become the new NWA World Heavyweight Champion. The main event featured Sting, the United States Champion Dustin Rhodes, the British Bulldog Davey Boy Smith, and the Shockmaster, battling the WCW World Heavyweight Champion Big Van Vader, Sid Vicious, and Harlem Heat in War Games. Road Warrior Animal advised his team, while Harley Race and Colonel Robert Parker managed the opposing team. With his ribs taped up, Rhodes raced in to start the match against Vader. Rhodes took off his cowboy boot and began bashing Vader. It only slowed Vader down momentarily, with the monster bashing Rhodes with rights and lefts. Vader dominated until Rhodes began bashing him once again with the cowboy boot for the rest of the 5-minute period. The coin toss occurred, leading to Harlem Heat member Kane, also known as Stevie Ray, entering next to join Vader in pummeling Rhodes. Sting entered next to take care of Vader and Kane, while a bloody Rhodes took a breather. Sid was the next to join the fray, chokeslamming Sting. Vader and Sid lifted Sting up, pressing him up against the roof of the cage. The Bulldog evened things up, taking care of both Vader and Sid on his own. Sting joined the Bulldog in pressing Sid up and bouncing him off the roof of the cage. Harlem Heat member Cole, also known as Booker T, was the final entrant for his team. The Shockmaster was the last to enter, beginning the match beyond. Being the fresh man, the Shockmaster tossed his opponents around with ease. The Shockmaster squeezed Cole in a bear hug, picking up the victory by submission. The October 2nd edition of Saturday Night featured a promo from the new NWA World Heavyweight Champion, Ravishing Rick Rude, who appeared from a fancy living room. Holding his new title belt, Rude said that he's admired the Nature Boy Ric Flair his entire career, calling him the greatest of all time. Rude said that since he's proven that he can beat the man, he must be the new man. After winning an enhancement match, Stunning Steve Austin joined Tony Schiavone for an interview. Colonel Robert Parker interrupted and made Austin an offer. Austin said that he's already a star, and the Hollywood Blondes are sticking together. Parker said that he's not going to give up trying. From the locker room, the Nature Boy Ric Flair cut a promo, saying that he hates losing. Flair didn't think that Ravishing Rick Rude could handle the rigors of being the champion. The Nature Boy said that this only motivates him, and he's going to Halloween Havoc to take back the NWA World Heavyweight Championship. Tony Schiavone conducted an interview on location from the Shockmaster's living room. Wearing a hard hat, the Shockmaster sat on a couch, surrounded by a dozen children. They watched Cartoon Network and read comic books, with Shockmaster referring to himself as Uncle Fred. Schiavone asked why the Shockmaster wore a hard hat, with the big man saying it's out of respect for the blue-collar worker. The Shockmaster said that despite being clumsy, he takes charge in the ring, citing his winning performance in War Games. One of the children asked Uncle Fred to blow up a balloon. He did, with the balloon popping. One of the kids filled the balloon with flour, which now covered the Shockmaster. The October 9th episode of Saturday Night featured the WCW Amateur Challenge, which was a segment that featured promos sent in by fans. This week's edition featured a promo sent in by a young Matt Hardy. Tony Schiavone conducted an interview with the NWA World Heavyweight Champion, Ravishing Rick Rude, from his home. Schiavone asked Rude how he felt about WCW saying that they only recognized one world champion, Big Van Vader. Rude wasn't surprised, saying that it's been a conspiracy against him from day one. He held up his title, saying that his belt says World Heavyweight Champion. Furthermore, Rude said that he beat Nature Boy Ric Flair, so that makes him the man. Rude hyped his upcoming match at Halloween Havoc against Flair, saying, "I'm going to stay the man from now until the end of time." The October 16th edition of Saturday Night saw Tony Schiavone interview the Nature Boy Ric Flair, who was accompanied by Fifi. Flair hyped his upcoming match at Halloween Havoc against the NWA World Heavyweight Champion, Ravishing Rick Rude. He said, "Being the man and staying the man are two different things." In the main event, Big Van Vader defended the WCW World Heavyweight Championship against Ricky the Dragon Steamboat in a human cage match. Essentially, it was a lumberjack match, with a human cage making sure that nobody could escape the ring. It was a hard-hitting battle, with Steamboat rolling out of the way of a Vader bomb, and then leaping off the second rope, landing on Vader with a double foot stomp. Steamboat took Vader over the top rope with a crossbody. With the human cage divided and the referee's hands full, Sid snuck into the ring and powerbombed Steamboat. Once Vader was rolled back into the ring, he hit Steamboat with a big splash and scored the pinfall victory. The October 23rd episode of Saturday Night saw Too Cold Scorpio and Marcus Alexander Bagwell defeat the Nasty Boys to become the new WCW World Tag Team Champions. In front of the ominous wheel used for Spin the Wheel, Make the Deal, Tony Schiavone interviewed Cactus Jack. With barbed wire in hand, Cactus said the stipulations on the wheel were all his friends. He talked about a bike he had as a child that had no brakes. After one particular spill, he rode down a hill and ended up crashing into a fence of barbed wire. It was on that day that he knew that he liked pain. Cactus said, "The things in life that bring fear into normal man's hearts bring Cactus Jack comfort." Harley Race interrupted, with Cactus drilling him with a double-arm DDT. Halloween Havoc took place on October 24th, beginning with a bizarre segment involving a group of children trick-or-treating and knocking on the door of a creepy house. Answering the door was Tony Schiavone, who invited the children inside, but acted fishy from the start. The children called him out, with Schiavone asking the children if they wanted to see something scary. He ripped his own face off, revealing a werewolf that scared the children and caused them to run away. Lord Steven Regal defended the World Television Championship against the British Bulldog, Davey Boy Smith. It was a hard-hitting bout, with Regal taking the fight to the mat. The Bulldog battled back and caught his second wind in the final minutes. Regal felt the running power slam, but the Bulldog wasn't able to put away the champion. The Bulldog spiked Regal with a pile driver, but the time limit ran out before the referee could make the count. It was time for the WCW World Heavyweight Champion Vader to spin the wheel, make the deal. Pyro shot from the wheel as Vader spun it, which landed on Texas Deathmatch. Vader would face Cactus Jack in the main event. Marcus Alexander Bagwell and Too Cold Scorpio defended the WCW World Tag Team Championships against the Nasty Boys. Managers Missy Hyatt and Teddy Long argued on the apron, distracting the referee. Scorpio hit Knobs with a 450 splash, but Sags used his own boot to waffle Scorpio across the back of the head. Knobs pinned Scorpio, scoring the pinfall victory, with the Nasty Boys crowned the new WCW Tag Team Champions. Sting battled Sid Vicious, with the fight spilling through the crowd to kick off the match. Back in the ring, Colonel Robert Parker distracted Sting, allowing Sid to hit a chokeslam. Parker distracted the referee, allowing Sid to bash Sting across the back with a steel chair. Sting regained the advantage, with a desperate Parker reaching into the ring to grab the ankle of the Stinger. Instead, he tripped up Sid and allowed Sting to score a pinfall victory. Ravishing Rick Rude defended the NWA World Heavyweight Championship against the Nature Boy Ric Flair, who was accompanied by Fifi. There were two referees, with Terry Taylor being the official on the floor. Rude tried to use a steel chair on the floor, with Taylor ripping it out of his hands. The battle raged on in the ring, with the referee getting knocked out in the crossfire. Taylor attempted to check on the official, but also ended up getting knocked out. Rude pulled out a foreign object, but got hit with a back suplex from Flair. The Nature Boy got a hold of the weapon and used it to knock out Rude. Flair made the cover, with the initial official preventing Taylor from making the 3 count. After conversing, the referees declared Rude the winner by disqualification. Flair grabbed the championship, while Rude picked up Fifi and attempted to escape up the aisle. Rude was ambushed by Flair, who applied the figure 4 leg lock, with the referees quickly breaking things up. In the main event, the WCW World Heavyweight Champion Big Van Vader battled Cactus Jack in a Texas death match. Things kicked off on the ramp, with the two brawling to the floor. Vader set Cactus up against a steel ring post and swung. Cactus ducked, and Vader struck the ring post. With a steel chair in hand, Cactus waffled Vader over the head. The battle entered the ring, where Vader began striking Cactus with vicious right hands. Cactus retaliated, suplexing Vader over the top rope and onto the ramp. He followed it up by back suplexing Vader onto the ramp. Harley Race snuck up on Cactus with a steel chair, but the challenger turned around just in time. Cactus pummeled Race and used the chair to smash Vader over the head. They battled onto the stage and into a mock grave with a tombstone that read, Vader. Cactus emerged from the grave first, with blood dripping from a cut above his left eye. With blood pouring from his forehead, Vader stumbled out of the grave. Cactus took him down with a lariat and scored a pinfall, with Vader able to continue after a 30-second rest period. With a wooden cactus in hand, Cactus plowed down Vader, with the champion retreating to the floor. Cactus dove off the ramp, landing on Vader with an elbow drop for another 3 count. The battle returned to the ring, where Cactus set up the timekeeper's table in the corner and Irish whipped Vader against it. Ringside, Cactus front suplexed a bloody Vader onto a steel guardrail. Vader took the fight into the crowd and tossed Cactus back over the guardrail. The champion grabbed a steel chair and bashed Cactus over the head. Back in the ring, Vader moonsaulted off the top rope, crushing Cactus and scoring a pinfall. The match continued, with Cactus jumping on the back of Vader with a sleeper hold. Vader fell backwards, crushing Cactus. The champion grabbed a steel chair and swung for the fences, bashing Cactus over the head. Vader spiked Cactus with a DDT onto the chair, with the referee calling for the paramedics. Vader tossed the paramedics aside and pinned Cactus. The battle continued until Race pulled out a taser and shocked Cactus on the back of the leg. With both men down, the referee began to count, with Vader getting to his feet before 10. While Vader was declared the winner, Cactus spiked Race with a double-arm DDT onto the ramp. The October 30th episode of Saturday Night saw Tony Schiavone interview the Hollywood Blondes at ringside. Colonel Robert Parker interrupted, praising Stunning Steve Austin. Flying Brian Pillman said, "What about me?" Parker cited Pillman's bad knee and compared him to a racehorse, saying he'd take Pillman out back and put him out of his misery. Pillman attacked Parker, punching him repeatedly in the face. Shockingly, Austin ambushed Pillman and put the boots to him around ringside. Austin dropped Pillman throat first onto a steel guardrail. Parker got his own shots in, with the officials racing to ringside to break things up. In the main event, the Nature Boy Ric Flair battled Sid Vicious to determine the #1 contender. Colonel Robert Parker distracted the referee, allowing Sid to use a chair to bash Flair across the back. The Nature Boy battled back and locked Sid in a figure 4. Just as Sid reversed the hold, Parker caused a disqualification by striking Flair. While Flair was declared the #1 contender, Sid argued with Parker. The show ended with Sid chokeslamming Parker in the middle of the ring. The November 6th edition of Saturday Night saw Tony Schiavone introduce the newest member to the broadcast team, Mean Gene Okerlund. Surprised, Jesse the Body Ventura said that Okerlund was going to follow him to the ends of the earth. At ringside, Tony Schiavone interviewed Stunning Steve Austin and Colonel Robert Parker. Austin talked about turning on Flying Brian Pillman, calling himself the quarterback of the team. He said he carried the team to gold, but Pillman didn't return the favor. Austin predicted a harsh fate for Pillman in their upcoming encounter at the Clash of the Champions. The Clash of the Champions took place on November 10th and saw Flying Brian Pillman battle his former partner, Stunning Steve Austin, who was accompanied by Colonel Robert Parker. The former Hollywood Blondes battled back and forth in an intense bout. They battled on the ramp and around ringside before the action returned to the ring. Austin worked on the knee of Pillman, wrenching at him in a half crab. Pillman battled back and attempted a superplex, which Austin reversed into a front suplex that sent his former partner crashing face first onto the canvas. Austin jumped off the ropes, with Pillman drop-kicking him in the face. Pillman reversed a powerbomb, sending Austin flying with a Frankensteiner for a 2 count. Springing off the ropes, Pillman attempted Air Pillman, only for Austin to catch him and hit a power slam for a 2 count. Both men traded pinfall attempts and battled at a rapid pace. Parker interfered, shoving Pillman off the top rope as he attempted Air Pillman. Austin made the cover, picking up the pinfall victory. Pillman attacked Austin after the bell and sent Parker racing away to safety. In the main event, Big Van Vader defended the WCW World Heavyweight Championship against the Nature Boy Ric Flair. Prior to the start, Flair locked Harley Race in a figure 4. Vader broke things up, crushing Flair with a big splash. Flair battled back, chopping Vader to the mat and then putting the boots to him. The champion shifted the momentum and tossed Flair to the floor, where Race got in some cheap shots. With Flair's back pressed up against a steel guardrail, Vader dove off the ring apron, looking for a big tackle. Flair moved, and Vader crashed against the guardrail. Flair dove off the top rope, landing on Vader on the floor with a double axe handle. Back in the ring, Flair locked in a figure 4, with Vader screaming in pain. Race broke it up by raking the eyes of Flair behind the referee's back. Vader jumped off the second rope, with Flair catching him and hitting a big power slam for a 2 count. The referee got in the way, with Vader accidentally striking him. Flair dove off the ropes, with Vader catching him in midair. Vader placed Flair on the top rope and hit a huge superplex all the way to the canvas. The champion climbed back to the top rope, flying through the air with a Vader salt. Flair moved, and Vader crashed onto the mat. A wary referee awoke as Flair made the cover and got the 3 count. As Flair got his shots in on Race, the referee announced the actual decision. Vader was disqualified. Stunning Steve Austin joined Vader in ambushing Flair, with Dustin Rhodes and the Shockmaster racing in for the save. The November 13th episode of Saturday Night saw the WCW World Heavyweight Champion Big Van Vader team with Stunning Steve Austin to battle the Nature Boy Ric Flair and Sid Vicious. Prior to the start, Sid was attacked by the Colossal Kongs, who laid him out. This allowed Vader to crush Sid with a big splash on the floor. As Sid was attended to, Arn Anderson filled in as the partner for Flair. All 4 battled around ringside to kick things off with a wild start. Back in the ring, a hard-hitting bout ensued that raged on for over 30 minutes of grueling action. Flair locked Austin in a figure 4, with Colonel Robert Parker raking the eyes of the Nature Boy to break things up. The show went off the air with Anderson rolling Flair out of the way as Vader attempted a Vader bomb. The November 20th edition of Saturday Night featured the debut of the iconic Control Center intro. A vignette aired hyping Battle Bowl, featuring multiple wrestlers giving their thoughts on what it means to win the whole thing. Battle Bowl took place on November 20th, featuring the Lethal Lottery. The pay-per-view also featured footage from a Starrcade press conference, where Mean Gene Okerlund announced that the granddaddy of them all would take place in Charlotte, North Carolina. Okerlund introduced the World Heavyweight Champion Big Van Vader and Harley Race. The Nature Boy Ric Flair interrupted, presenting Vader with a contract for a championship match. Flair said that if he can't beat Vader, he'll leave wrestling. Vader wasn't impressed and said that he was going to add Flair's head to his trophy wall. 16 wrestlers advanced to the Battle Bowl Battle Royal, winding down to 4. The WCW World Heavyweight Champion Big Van Vader, Sting, the Nature Boy Ric Flair, and Stunning Steve Austin. All 4 ended up fighting on the ramp, where Vader hit Flair with an elbow drop to the crotch. Vader then hit Flair with a big splash, with the Nature Boy stretchered away. Back in the ring, Vader and Austin pummeled Sting mercilessly. Sting battled back and eliminated Austin, leaving him alone in the match with Vader. Racing across the ring, Sting attempted a Stinger Splash. Vader moved, with Sting crashing against the top turnbuckle and tumbling over the top rope. It was made official. Big Van Vader was the winner of Battle Bowl. The December 4th episode of Saturday Night saw Mean Gene Okerlund interview the WCW World Heavyweight Champion Big Van Vader, who was accompanied by Harley Race. Vader hyped his upcoming match at Starrcade against the Nature Boy Ric Flair. The champion said, "You bring all your famous friends, Lawrence Taylor, Michael Jordan, the Mayor, bring your friends, bring your neighbors, bring your relatives, bring your mama, bring your wife, bring your baby boy, 'cause I'm coming not only to defend my world title, but to embarrass you and cause you pain and humiliation." Vader told Flair to prepare for war and bragged that he would end the career of the Nature Boy. The December 11th edition of Saturday Night saw Mr. Wonderful Paul Orndorff and Lord Steven Regal in action against Paul Roma and, substituting for an injured Arn Anderson, Eric Watts. During the bout, Roma turned on Watts, allowing Orndorff to gain a pinfall victory. The assassin put his arm around Roma, who revealed that he was in cahoots with Orndorff. After winning an enhancement match, the NWA World Heavyweight Champion, Ravishing Rick Rude, joined Mean Gene Okerlund for an interview. Rude discussed his opponent for Starrcade, the British Bulldog Davey Boy Smith, saying that they didn't have to wait until the pay-per-view. Out came the Bulldog, with officials holding him back. The Bulldog said that he didn't want to wait for Starrcade, challenging Rude to face him next week. Mean Gene Okerlund interviewed the Nature Boy Ric Flair, who had Fifi by his side. Flair discussed his upcoming match at Starrcade against the WCW World Heavyweight Champion Big Van Vader. He said, 18 years ago, a plane crashed. 1 man died, 2 were paralyzed for life, and one went on to become the world champion 10 times. Respect for that? No, says Vader. Flair hyped his famed history at Starrcade, getting emotional. He said, "We're talking about the world title. We're talking about what I've lived, breathed, and wanted to be from day one, and that's the best. So at Starrcade, I'll walk that aisle, I'll style and profile, and with tears in my eyes, if you want me, you're gonna have to take me, baby." The December 18th episode of Saturday Night saw Mean Gene Okerlund interview WCW's attorney Gary Juster, who said that the British Bulldog Davey Boy Smith was scheduled to appear. NWA World Heavyweight Champion Ravishing Rick Rude stood in the ring with the Bulldog nowhere to be found, and thus counted out. Rude gloated about his victory, saying that there's nobody left to challenge him. Out came the Boss, formerly the Big Boss Man from the WWF, who raced to the ring and ambushed Rude. With the referee calling for the bell, the match was made, with the Boss pummeling Rude around ringside. Back in the ring, Rude gained the advantage, wearing down the Boss. But the Boss persevered, hitting Rude with a Boss Slam to score the 3 count and win the non-title match. Following the match, Mean Gene Okerlund interviewed the Boss, who called Rude a criminal. The Boss said that he was coming for Rude's World Heavyweight Championship. Starrcade took place on December 27th from Charlotte, North Carolina in Independence Arena. An excellent video opened the show, highlighting the life and career of the Nature Boy Ric Flair. Mean Gene Okerlund was shown on location at Flair's house, where the Nature Boy said goodbye to his wife and children. Flair joined Okerlund in a white limo, where they discussed the main event match against the World Heavyweight Champion, Big Van Vader. The Nature Boy said that he had to prove to himself that he's the same man he used to be. Flair arrived to the arena and was quickly whisked away by security. Before leaving, Mean Gene wished the Nature Boy luck. The Natural Dustin Rhodes defended the United States Championship against Stunning Steve Austin in a 2 out of 3 falls match. In the first fall, Rhodes Irish whipped Austin into Colonel Robert Parker, knocking him off the ring apron. In turn, Austin tumbled over the top rope, with the referee calling for a disqualification. The lights went out in the second fall, which didn't stop Rhodes from pummeling a bloody Austin. Once the lights went back on, Austin rolled up Rhodes, hooked the tights, and scored the pinfall victory to become the new United States Champion. Ravishing Rick Rude successfully defended the World Heavyweight Championship against the Boss. The Nasty Boys defended the WCW World Tag Team Championships against Sting and Road Warrior Hawk. Missy Hyatt accompanied the champions, getting in cheap shots on Sting and Hawk behind the referee's back. The battle raged on, with Sting lifting Brian Knobbs up on his shoulders and Hawk diving off the top rope with a clothesline. Missy Hyatt broke up a pinfall attempt to cause a disqualification, with the titles remaining with the Nasty Boys. In the main event, Vader defended the WCW World Heavyweight Championship against the Nature Boy Ric Flair. Per the stipulation, if Flair lost, he'd be forced to retire. The Charlotte crowd chanted Flair in unison as both men locked up to start the bout. Flair forced Vader to chase him in an attempt to wear the champion out. Vader wasn't having any of it and pummeled Flair to the mat, with Harley Race shouting at the Nature Boy from ringside. On the floor, Vader pressed Flair over his head and dropped him onto a steel guardrail. Flair dodged a flying body tackle, with Vader smashing against a guardrail. The Nature Boy began chopping at the chest of Vader and rammed his head against a steel ring post. While the referee checked on the champion, Race ambushed Flair and tossed him back into the ring. Vader battered Flair, jumping off the second rope and crashing against the Nature Boy with a flying body tackle. Flair bounced back, hitting the champion with 3 forearm smashes off the top rope to knock Vader off his feet. He followed it up by hitting a knee drop to the face of the champion. Vader sat up and plowed down Flair with a clothesline and busted open the mouth of the Nature Boy. The champion followed it up by superplexing Flair off the top rope. Instead of pinning him, Vader dropped an elbow onto the groin of Flair. Vader tossed Flair to the floor, where Race inflicted more damage. Back in the ring, Vader squashed Flair with a big splash into the corner. Flair battled back, chopping and punching Vader until the champion crumbled to the mat. He dragged Vader to a ring post and smashed his left leg against it. With the referee tied up with Race, Flair used a chair to smash the leg of Vader. Flair maintained the momentum, punching away at the face of the champion and smashing him over the head with a chair. Back in the ring, Flair bit the face of Vader and then attempted a figure 4 leg lock. Vader kicked Flair away and attempted a Vader bomb. Flair moved and Vader crashed to the mat. The fans rose to their feet as Flair applied the figure 4 leg lock in the middle of the ring. Race bounced around on the ring apron, screaming at Vader, who ended up reaching the bottom rope to break the hold. Vader battled back, striking Flair with elbows to the face. The champion climbed to the top rope, soaring through the air with a Vader Saw. Flair rolled out of the way and made the cover. Meanwhile, Race launched off the top rope with a diving headbutt. Vader kicked out of a pinfall attempt, but took the maneuver from Race. Referee Randy Anderson pushed Race out of the ring, and the action continued. Flair lit up the chest of Vader with chops, but the champion struck with a flying body tackle. Rolling up Vader, Flair scored the pinfall victory out of nowhere to become the new WCW World Heavyweight Champion. Fireworks burst over the ring as the crowd went wild in celebration of the Nature Boy's historic victory. Backstage, Eric Bischoff stood in the locker room of an irate Vader who shouted at Harley Race. Vader began punching a row of lockers, which came off the wall. He threw them aside and screamed that he wanted his title back. Backstage, Mean Gene interviewed an emotional Ric Flair who stood with his family. Overwhelmed by emotion, Flair stepped aside, hanging back with his young son Reed. Sting and Ricky Steamboat congratulated the new WCW World Heavyweight Champion. Flair spoke through tears, saying, "I have been a very, very fortunate man." What challenges would face Ric Flair in the new year? Find out next time as we continue our WCW arc and cover World Championship Wrestling in 1994. If you'd like to support the show, please like, share, and subscribe. You can follow us on Instagram at squared.circle.history. You can also buy Squared Circle History and Pro Wrestling Rushmore t-shirts from Pro Wrestling Tees. Thank you for listening, and keep dropping elbows.